I'd like to start by congratulating the authors, Dr. David Ige and Mr. Dapo Akinosun, on the publication and presentation of this major contribution to the existing knowledge in oil and gas law, especially gas. I also want to say that I think the book speaks very eloquently to the quality of thoughts that's abundant across Nigeria. And this is an important point to make, especially because of the frequent criticism that there is a paucity of homegrown research and local knowledge production about the issues that affect our own country at different levels. Well, I believe that part of what we must continue to do, and which is particularly exciting to see, is that connection between expert knowledge, policy making, and implementation. And this, I think, would strengthen our publishing architecture and knowledge market. Congratulations again, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your service in this regard. In recent months, natural gas has taken center stage in global politics, geopolitics, especially with the war in Ukraine going on. And what it has done, I think, is that it has served as a poignant reminder to us all of the complex web of energy security concerns that nations and regions now face. As gas prices skyrocketed, countries were forced to confront the vulnerabilities of their own energy supply strategies, giving rise to urgent calls here and there for reevaluation and diversification. The European Commission and the EU generally had proposed plans to reduce their region's dependence on Russian gas by at least 2/3 by 2030. The US also supported the diversification efforts of its allies as well as its own. And the US has also reduced very considerably its own reliance on importation of gas, in fact, of oil, generally with the shale oil. And they supported their allies by making additional exports of LNG to Europe. And they've signed recently deals with countries to develop new energy infrastructure and accelerated the development of renewable energy technologies also. Even Japan, an island with few domestic energy resources, has increased its import of LNG from other countries such as the US and Australia, so that it does not depend on any single source. It's also invested in the construction of floating offshore wind farms, as well as promoting the use of solar. So the landscape of the global energy market is drastically being redrawn. The key question, of course, for us is, how does Nigeria respond? How do we position ourselves from the vantage point of a nation with abundant energy resources, working assiduously to diversify its energy resources, develop domestic resources, enhance energy efficiency, and strengthen our infrastructure? Our nation, like others around the world, finds itself suddenly in a situation where we must navigate this challenging transition wisely and with our economic future in clear perspective. So beyond the present risks of price volatility and geopolitical tensions, the reality of climate change and the increasing urgency for cleaner energy sources are also becoming apparent. For us here in this part of the world, increased temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, more frequent extreme weather events are all having serious consequences for our ecosystems, for agriculture, for water resources, and of course for human beings across our country, and especially the entire Sahel region. So the push to phase out fossil fuels quickly and discourage new investments in related projects is ramping up. And we must take these calls to action seriously, not just for the sake of our environment But also for our economy and for our people. It's important that we must emphasize that while climate change is an existential threat, our own energy poverty and our development is also a major threat. And so we must find a way of balancing both. Now, I think that this will involve a faithful implementation of our energy transition plan, which, as some of us will know, involves the implementation of our decade of gas proposals. But we must also assure our compatriots in the Paris agreements and other agreements that the use of gas as a transition fuel will not significantly derail our commitment to carbon negative growth. Nigeria's energy transition plan attempts to chart a pathway forward because we see solar and renewable energy as the bedrock of that plan. And the plan is to develop about 250 gigawatts of solar power by 2060, which is when we intend to be net zero. The plan also outlines our decarbonization strategies in the area of power, oil and gas, and transportation, etc. But it also seeks to mitigate against the possible long-term job losses in oil and gas, in the oil and gas sector in particular, because this is an industry that has dominated our economy for decades. And if we're going to transition out of fossil fuels, we must take into account the fact that there will be long-term job losses. It recommends the role of gas as a transition fuel to balance the large influxes of solar power on our grid. It's also cheaper and relatively clean option for baseload power for industry, especially as we expect and watch the cost of solar batteries plunge. We've had to explain to several of our compatriots in the Paris agreements, and by this I refer to the wealthier countries of the world, that no country has yet been known to develop its industry solely on renewable energy, and that the call for us to do so solely on renewable energy is unreasonable. So there must be, they must take into account the fact that we as a gas-rich country require gas, not just for industry, but also to even be able to effectively use solar power, especially on our grid. There are also practical ways, of course, that gas helps. Propane will bridge the gap, for instance, before the full use of renewables. And this is practical. Propane is, as we know, LPG. And for those of us who have been, saying we need to have a change from deforestation caused by the use of firewood and all the dangers, not just to the climate, but to families who use firewood in the rural areas, and that we need to have a clean alternative. LPG at least offers that alternative. It's not the cleanest, but at least it is so much better than firewood and other fossil fuel options. So that is also important for us, that we're able to use LPG as a replacement for firewood. And that answers a lot of the questions around deforestation that we have. There are also, of course, many practical uses of gas for us. And we believe that we must continue to pursue the use of fossil fuels, especially in this transition phase. So the road ahead is both challenging and full of promise. And we must embrace the opportunity to harness our vast natural gas resources responsibly and judiciously, while simultaneously charting a path towards a cleaner and greener future. And we have the potential to become a global leader, not just in gas production, but also in the clean use of gas and in renewable energy as we go into the future. Already there's a lot of talk about hydrogen, green hydrogen in particular, which of course you require natural gas to produce. And there are huge investments that people are already making all over the world in hydrogen. So we ourselves as a nation ought to be thinking in terms of these greener gases. I believe that investments in hydrogen is something we should take seriously. I'm sure that the group CEO of NNPCL will take that into account as we plan for the future. So let me again commend the authors of this book, Understanding Natural Gas, a Nigerian Perspective. This is an important book. And as has been pointed out, is one of the few technical texts that has a strong policy and legal perspective and is also simple to read. Well done indeed. Thank you all very much for listening.